The country is in debt, local governments are in debt, state-owned companies are in debt, private businesses and workers are in debt. Almost everyone is burdened with debt. Meanwhile, the central bank is printing money frantically with the money supply nearing 30 trillion yuan. But where is all this money going? Some business owners say they haven't received support from banks and loans are harder to get than last year. Declining business and fewer employees, banks are reluctant to lend. Profitable industries don't even need loans, and ordinary people are saving and cutting back. They are not taking out loans for investment or consumption. So the 26 trillion yuan printed in 2023 hasn't really flowed into the market. Now banks either need to relax lending criteria or change credit standards. What impact will this have on the market? Currently in China, the state, local governments, state-owned enterprises, private businesses, and the general public are all heavily in debt, with almost every economic entity borrowing money. As China's economy declines and finances worsen, local governments have increasingly relied on issuing bonds to ease their debt burden. According to the official CCP data, in the first 7 months of this year, local government issued about 4.2 trillion yuan in bonds, with refinancing bonds accounting for around 2 trillion yuan. And new bonds totaling about 2.2 trillion yuan, raising attention. Local government bonds are divided into refinancing bonds and new bonds. Refinancing bonds are used to repay maturing debts or existing obligations, essentially borrowing new funds to pay off old debts. New bonds are mainly used for major projects like infrastructure development. A Chinese media report by China Business Network noted that in recent years, the scale of maturing local debts has been significant, leading to higher refinancing bond insurance to mitigate debt risk. Out of the newly issued 2.2 trillion yuan in bonds, around 1.8 trillion yuan goes to new special purpose bonds, while 400 billion yuan goes to new general purpose bonds. About 34% of the special purpose bonds are going to municipal and industrial park infrastructure. Around 20% will be used for transportation infrastructure like government toll roads and urban transit. Around 9% is allocated for shanty town renovations, 7.5% for healthcare, and 5.4% for agriculture, forestry, and water projects. According to Wen Bing, chief economist at China Minsheng Bank, in the first 7 months of this year, 68% of special bond funds were allocated to infrastructure, higher than last year's level of 63%, emphasizing infrastructure as a key focus. Since late June, regions like Henan, Xinjiang, and Shanxi have issued new special bonds, totaling 254 billion yuan at the end of July. Unlike regular special bonds, these special bonds do not publicly disclose detailed financial audits and legal opinions. Instead, they are used to pay off existing debt. According to official CCP data, by the end of June 2024, local government debt had reached 42.6 trillion yuan. However, Goldman Sachs estimate that the total local government debt, including hidden debts from local government financing platform, has surged to 94 trillion yuan. Chinese-American economist Li Henqing from the Institute of Information and Strategy noted that the key issue is whether these debts are enough to meet actual needs. Clearly, they aren't, as government debt is simply too large. Li pointed out that including the newly issued 4.2 trillion yuan in bonds, local government debt is nearing 100 trillion yuan or 14 trillion USD. There isn't enough money to pay the interest, let alone the principal. There's also no money left to support livelihoods or stimulate the economy. Local governments are now widely seen as broke. Due to extremely low fiscal revenue, they cannot repay the debt, so they keep issuing new bonds. Straightforward Finance channel on Chinese social media shared a video explaining the real situation behind local government debt. Society funds are used to finance infrastructure projects through loans and bonds, with local governments selling the appreciated land to developers. As cities expand and real estate investments surge, land and housing prices rise sharply. Local governments only repay interest, causing their debt to grow. When the market overheats and supply exceeds demand, properties remain unsold. Developers go bankrupt, investment products collapse, and many regions struggle to even cover interest payments. This is the current crisis. At the end of July CCP Central Politburo meeting, it was decided to accelerate the issuance and use of special bonds. Experts expect that local bond issuance will significantly speed up between August and October, likely peaking for the year. Local government financing platform debt is considered off-balance sheet, forming part of local government's hidden debt. Many believe the primary debt risk for the CCP lies in hidden local debts, especially urban investment debts, as it often lacks accurate data and is not reflected in official fiscal statistics. Who holds nearly 100 trillion yuan in local government debt? According to Li Henqing, it's largely held by large state-owned enterprises compelled by the government under the guise of patriotism. Another major holder is the large state-owned banks, Bank of China, ICBC, Agriculture Bank, China Construction Bank, Postal Savings Bank, and China Everbright Bank. In the end, these banks bear the burden because the CCP won't repay these bonds, turning them into bad debts. This drags the bank into the debt crisis, reducing their liquidity, creating a vicious cycle. Industry experts often describe local financing platforms as the black hole of China's financial system. A report from the Bank of China's Research Institute highlighted that the debt of these platforms, especially urban investment platforms, totals tens of trillions of yuan, posing a systematic risk to CCP's financial stability. Most urban investment debt is rolled over by borrowing new to repay old practices, but interest repayment must still be paid. Taiwanese economist Shun Guoxiang previously noted that urban investment companies rely on bonds to secure funding and roll over debt. If a default triggers a chain reaction, it impacts local governments and urban investment companies, threatening to stability of the financial market. Regarding the outlook of local debt, Li explained that many of these bonds have 10, 20, or even 30-year terms, so their maturity is far off. The real worry is when the interest repayments are due. When both principal and interest need to be paid, it will be extremely difficult, turning these bonds into junk. Buyers are increasingly hesitant because they know the government doesn't intend to repay these debts. They're simply rolling over old debt with new loans. Ensuring asset safety in such a situation is nearly impossible. Recently disclosed provincial audit reports have revealed that the effectiveness of new special bond fund usage has fallen short of expectations, with issues such as slow project progress, improper use of funds, and idle funds. A report by Goldman Sachs on July 5th indicated that China's major state-owned banks face excessive exposure to local government debt risk, leading to a downgrade of their stock ratings from neutral and buy to sell. For over a decade, economists have been closely monitoring China's local debt issues. In a February 4, 2023 interview with the New York Times, Victor Shi, an associate professor at the University of California, San Diego, noted that in early 2009, then Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao approved local governments to set up massive financing platforms, borrowing from state-owned banks with land as collateral. In just 2 years, these loans exceeded 10 trillion yuan and grew by 15 to 20% annually. She estimated that local debt in China might have reached close to 100 trillion yuan. Economic expert Dr. Chen Xiaonong also conducted research on China's local debt. In his last year's article for Radio Free Asia, Chen stated that as of the end of 2022, local government debt totaled 35 trillion yuan, including hidden debt. Local debt had reached 88 trillion yuan by the end of 2020. Adding in the 22 trillion yuan in central government debt, the total debt for China's central and local governments amounted to 110 trillion yuan, equivalent to 91% of China's GDP, well above the international recognized 60% warning threshold. Chen argued that local governments in China simply cannot repay these debts and warned that failure to address this massive debt could lead to a full-scale and severe economic crisis in China. In a March article published by NetEase News, Fen Chuan, an associate professor at Wuhan University School of Political Science and Public Administration, noted that local governance in China is plagued by credit exhaustion, with governments often being the largest defaulters. Fen found that trust issues have spread from county governments to townships and villages, with county governments defaulting on payments to banks and enterprises, township failing to pay village cadres and contractors, and villages losing trust in local officials. The county government's loss of trust with banks is evident in its practice of paying only interest without repaying the principal. For example, in Guizhou province, a county leader aggressively promoted public construction projects for the sake of political achievements. Despite having only 100 million yuan in land-based revenue, the county accumulated a debt of 8 billion yuan and had to pay 100 to 200 million yuan in interest annually. However, the county leader shockingly stated that the debt will never be repaid. The banks can only expect interest payments, otherwise they won't even get the interest. Fen also mentioned that in Shanxi, a village spent over 2 million yuan building a square and 4 drainage ditches, but only received 400,000 yuan in funding, with the village head personally covering over 200,000 yuan. the village still owes the construction company 270,000 yuan. Feng concluded that this kind of deadbeat behavior is spreading across local governance systems, forming what he calls a credit exhaustion-based governance ecosystem that is eroding the social trust needed for effective governance. Due to financial difficulties, local governments have begun pursuing back taxes from businesses and individuals. On August 8, the Associated Press reported that several Chinese-listed companies revealed that they had been hit with tax bills going back decades, a move seen as part of the government's effort to boost local finances that have been strained by the downturn in the real estate market. For example, VV Food and Beverage reported receiving a tax bill of 85 million yuan for taxes owed 30 years ago. Chemical company Zhangge Mining disclosed that it received 2 tax bills amounting to 668 million yuan going back 20 years. Following CCP's recent third plenary session, new policies have called for expanding local tax revenue sources, emphasizing increased local tax administration authority and improved government debt management system. Reports suggest that the government rush to retrospectively collect overdue tax highlights the urgency of the issue. Experts question how the CCP will fully deliver on its promise to improve the tax system and better balance control over government revenue. Logan Wright from independent research firm Rhodium Group pointed out that there has been no effort to address existing local debt problems, nor to resolve constraints on fiscal capacity. It is reported that local government in China have long faced funding shortages as the central government controls most of the tax revenue and allocates only limited funds to local governments, which are responsible for around 80% of expenditures, including wages, social services, and infrastructure investments in roads and schools. With the economy slowing and costs rising due to the zero-COVID policy, local governments are facing increasing pressure. Reports suggest that sudden tax bills have severely impacted some businesses, further eroding already fragile business confidence. A finance professor from the University of Hong Kong Business School, Chen Zhiwu, expressed concerns that private investment in China is unlikely to grow if business owners continue to feel insecure, making an economic slowdown inevitable. In response to budget struggles, some local governments have reportedly set up joint tax enforcement centers operated by tax authorities and the police to collect unpaid taxes. Since 2019, these centers have been established in at least 23 provinces. Both individuals and companies have been targeted, with dozens of celebrities and online influencers fined millions of dollars for tax evasion in recent years. In 2021, live streaming star VR was fined 1.3 billion yuan for tax evasion. She avoided prosecution by paying the fine, but her social media accounts were suspended, crippling her business. The report noted that the CCP is reluctant to bail out struggling local governments. The central government only intervenes in emergencies, leaving local government to resolve their debt problems independently. Analysts warn that local governments' financial pressures and massive debt have become a looming threat to China's economy. Even if the central government provides financial aid, it would be insignificant compared to the scale of local debt.